Planning Commission to order for Tuesday, July 26th. Jennifer, can we do roll call, please?
Yes. First off, Chair Reed is, and then we have you, Vice Chair Fletcher,
Present.
and Commissioner Brassfield. Oh, is muted.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Dawson.
Here.
Commissioner Freeman.
Here.
Commissioner Latassa.
Here.
Commissioner Milich.
I'd Zoom.
Great.
Good. We have a quorum, so we can move forward. Let's see, everybody's here. Let's see, what staff members do we have? Jennifer Cleary. Who else do we have? Fernando Riveri. Is this on?
I'm not sure what you're looking at, but I can just do a quick announcement. We have.
Yeah, if you don't mind, my views are kind of messed up.
Yeah, no problem. First, we have Community Development Director Kim Cole, Principal Planner Fernando Riveri. We have Senior Associate Planner Chris Schmidt, and we have sorry, I had somebody who's not here. We also have a couple staff from Public Works. We have Cody Henning and Tom Hardy.
Okay.
And myself, Recording Secretary Jennifer Cleary.
Okay, perfect. So let's go to our consent agenda. We have item number 1, it looks like it's the approval of the minutes, or is that item number 2? From July 12th, 2022.
The minutes are item number 2. And before we start, I'm just going to have Jennifer make an announcement about how people can participate if you are in a remote situation, either through Zoom or by telephone.
Okay, thank you.
Members of the public are encouraged to join our meetings via Zoom Gov, a secure service that connects you live with no lag time. The meeting is also streamed live on youtube.com/City of Monterey with a 10-second delay and Comcast channel 25 with up to a 90-second delay. If you would like to provide public comment, please join the meeting using Zoom or by telephone, making sure to join in time to accommodate delays. To join the Zoom meeting from a computer or phone, use the link or phone numbers on the agenda posted at isearchmonterey.org. Since the meeting has started, you'll find the agenda under the Recent tab. To join by telephone, dial 833-568-8864 toll-free. Once again, that toll-free number is 833-568-8864. Then enter the webinar ID 161-990-8039. Once again, this meeting's webinar ID is 161-990-8039. If the first phone number doesn't work, there are more listed on the meeting agenda. If prompted for a participant ID, press pound. Detailed instructions for using Zoom are available at monterey.org/public meetings. To provide public comment via Zoom, please use the raise your hand function at the bottom of your screen. To provide comments by phone, dial *9 to raise your hand, then *6 to unmute when called upon. Public commenters will be announced using their last 3 phone number digits or the name typed into Zoom. Public commenters will be muted until it is their turn to speak. Please turn off TV or computer speakers or go into another room while connected, as background noise interferes with the broadcast. Public speakers will be called upon in order of hands raised. There is a 3-minute time limit for today's meeting. Please stay within that limit.
Thank you. Okay, so now we'll move on to our approval of minutes, item number 2 for July 12th, 2022. Are there any comments or questions?
No, I move to approve the minutes as presented.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Can we have roll call or call the vote on that one?
Yes, and just a reminder, Chair Reed is absent. Vice Chair Fletcher,
Yes.
Commissioner Brassfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Dawson,
Yes.
Commissioner
Yes.
Commissioner Latassa,
Yes.
and Commissioner Milich.
He's
Commissioner,
muted.
Commissioner Milich is muted.
Knock, knock, knock.
Yes.
There you go.
Who's there?
Where?
Okay, the minutes for July 12th, 2022 have been approved. Item number 3 on the consent agenda is a 6-month review of 724 Lighthouse Avenue use permit number UP-21-0556 for a commercial recreation and entertainment business, the break room. The applicant is Justin McLean. The owner is Igor Kadinsky. I know I just butchered that, apologies. At New Monterey Center LLC. Zone is PCLH zoning district, commercial general plan designation, and it's exempt from CEQA per Article 19, Section 15301, Class 1. Any comments from commissioners on item number 3?
No.
I have a question, if the applicant's available.
I don't believe they're on the call.
Thank you.
Is their name Marlana?
No.
Mike, is the applicant the only one that can answer your question?
Well, I was going to ask the question to the applicant of how their business is doing, since it was such a new issue for us. That was my question.
Anybody on staff have an answer to that might have talked to the applicant?
Yes, Chair, this is Chris Schmidt in the planning office. I did talk to them briefly about it. They stated that they've had over 1,000 customers thus far, and they're still attempting to grow and do more group bookings. So so far, it sounds like it's been successful.
Okay.
Thanks, Chris.
Any other questions or comments?
And on this item, we do need to ask if there's public comment.
Oh, we do. Okay. Well, let's see, Jennifer, can you, is there anybody in the room?
Does anyone in person want to provide comments on this item? The break room? Okay, nobody in person is raising their hand to speak. So just a reminder for those at home, to join the Zoom meeting from a computer or phone, use the link or phone numbers on the agenda posted at isearch.org. To join by telephone, dial 833-568-8864, toll free. Once again, that phone number is 833-568-8864. Then enter the webinar ID 161-990-8039. If you are in the Zoom meeting already, there is a raise your hand function at the bottom of the screen. You can press that to raise your hand and provide comments. And I see no hands raised, so I think nobody wants to comment on this item.
Okay, seeing that there's no public comment on the item, can we get a motion for approval?
Is it to be approved or is it just a report?
It's a received report.
It was just to conduct a 6-month review of the approved use permit, so there's no vote needed.
Okay. Sounds good.
You
So
can
that-
provide comments if you would like.
In this situation, do we move to receive the report or not?
I guess you could, that you've received the report. There's no formal action required. We just wanted to, you asked us to have a condition of approval on the use permit to report back within
Right.
6 months of the use permit. So we're fulfilling that condition of approval. So there's no specific action required by the Planning Commission.
Thank you.
Okay, since that's the case, we're going to move on to public comments. At this time, the public may speak for a maximum of 3 minutes on any subject which is within the jurisdiction of the Monterey Planning Commission and which is not on today's agenda. Do we have anybody that wishes to make a public comment? Either in person or online?
Does anyone in the audience want to provide public comment for items not on the agenda? No, no one in person. Just a reminder to join the Zoom meeting from a computer or phone, use the link or phone numbers on the agenda posted at isearchmonterey.org. The telephone number to join is 833-568-8864. And the webinar ID is 161-990-8039. And no hands are raised.
Okay, since there's appears to be no public comments, we'll move on to our public appearance agenda. Item number 4, which is a recommendation to the City Council that the 2022-23 Neighborhood and Community Improvement Program is consistent with the general plan, area plans, master plans, traffic calming plans, and Move Monterey multi-node plan. This is not a project under CEQA. Can we have a staff report, please?
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. It's my pleasure to introduce Cody Hennings from our engineering division. He helps with the neighborhood and community improvement program. We also have in the audience engineer Max Reiser and our senior engineer Tom Hardy. And one of the items required under both state law and city law is that the NCIP and the CIP annually come to the Planning Commission for consideration of consistency with adopted city plans. So as the City Council considers adoption of these budget items, they will know your opinions on whether or not it's consistent with the general plan and our various planning documents. And with that, I'll turn the presentation over to Cody, and he can share with you the consistency determination.
Thank you.
Oh, you can minimize the window. Yeah. Yeah.
It's always been
What are you
blurry
trying to show?
since it was installed.
It looks like it's already selected. Oh, I think. Wait, X out of that. Stop sharing.
Kim, is this a review before they're voted on for approval?
Correct. The NCIP, I believe, has made their recommendation to City Council, and Cody will go through sort of
Okay,
the overall number of projects the city received and then sort of the revised list. And then before the City Council approves the budget for NCIP and CIP, it's required under law that the Planning Commission conduct this meeting on those items before the budget is approved.
so there's not just going to be one winner.
No, in fact,
Many-
there's potentially many projects on this list
Okay.
that are evaluated, and the ultimate funding, maybe one gets a lot, maybe one gets none, will be the City Council's decision. And I
Okay.
think we're slating late August, early September potentially for that decision.
Okay.
How do they deal with public notification? I mean, is it just, is it noticed at all, or is it just,
So it's on our agendas, the consistency determination, as well as the approval of the NCIP and CIP budget. It's an annual action plan item. I believe as NCIP projects ultimately go forward, they have to obtain a certain amount of approval from the adjacent property owners to proceed as they move into project development. But with that, I'll turn it over to Cody and we can go from there.
Thank you, Kim, and thank you, Commission. So my name's Cody Hennings. I'm an engineering assistant here in Public Works, and I'm part of our Neighborhood and Community Improvement Program team. So I'll be here just kind of give a brief rundown of NCIP, what it is, and then our process that we've gone through so far this year. So Monterey hasn't always been the tourist destination that it is today. I think we all can agree that. So as tourism has increased, we've all felt the effects over the years. So the mayor and council agreed to set up a source of funding to collect tourist revenue and be able to direct that funding back into our neighborhoods and communities. So back in 1988, they put a measure on the ballot, which would appropriate 16% of the annual transient occupancy tax. Like I said, that money would then be used for capital improvement projects and beneficial projects to our community. So that's just a brief background of NCIP and where we are today. So as we're aware, in April 2020, the City Council voted to reallocate funding from our 120 currently approved NCIP projects. And that was to just assist with the general budget. So essentially from there, NCIP was put on pause, and today we're revamping the cycle. So we brought back those 120 previously approved projects back into this current cycle. So we start here today, I guess back in April with, or in March with 205 projects in our process. A little breakdown, like I said, we had 120 previously approved projects. We had 65 projects from 2020 that just kind of initially were screened. And then we also collected 20 projects submitted in 2022. So our process kind of begins with collecting project submittals. The deadline was March 4th. That's where we got our additional 20 projects this year. From there, we bring the projects in front of our NCIP committee, and there they go under our preliminary screening just to determine if they are in fact capital improvement projects and defined projects by the NCIP manual. From there, our staff, myself, Max Reeser, and Tom Hardy, met with other various departments from the city, Parks and Recs, libraries, and cultural arts, just to get feedback and input, and then also their priorities on the projects that were submitted. We also met with the Traffic Advisory Committee, and that includes planning, traffic engineering, fire department, and police department. From there, we moved on to our next step, where we held with the NCIP committee, held meetings to discuss each of the projects, kind of get kind of a background description, and involve the public in each of the projects, kind of status and where they plan on going with it. And then we followed those meetings with strictly public feedback meetings, because like NCIP, it's a very community-based program. We want that feedback from the public, which brought us to our voting night. Here, all of our projects were prioritized based on the cumulative score they received from each of the committee members. So each committee member votes 0 to 10 on each project, and then those scores are added to totaled, and that gives us a priority project list. From there, our staff will collect the priority project list and put it before council for approval of funding. So how we decide which projects go forward to council, we collect, or we estimate and gather our funding for the year. This year, we're anticipated to get $4.6 million. So with that information and our prioritized project list, we'll simply begin at our top priority project and move down until kind of what our estimates, based on our estimates, how far our budget will go until it's exhausted, essentially. And now I'll pass it to our planning director, Kim Cole, and she'll go over the planning
Yeah.
review.
And maybe you can just stay there and forward the slides.
Absolutely.
As I mentioned, our planning staff annually reviews these projects against our general plan and various specific plans. And so the City of Monterey General Plan, I think you're familiar with all our area plans. Next slide. In addition to the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, the Move Monterey Plan, which is our multimodal plan, which emphasizes bike transportation and pedestrian access and traffic calming plans. And your staff report includes a matrix that identifies the general plan policy we found each of the projects consistent with. And if it was mentioned in an area plan or the idea was conceived in the area plan, we included that as well. In addition to that, we do a preliminary screening of the projects with the California Environmental Quality Act. As the commission's very well aware, that is basically reviewing the environmental impacts of the proposed projects. And we do it at this really early phase before pen has been put to paper. In some cases, we're able to clearly identify up front that they're exempt. In other cases, we're able to identify up front where further environmental review will have to be conducted as part of the project. So what types of projects qualify as exempt? It could be an existing facility. They could be repairing existing light fixtures. They could be minor alterations of existing public structures involving basically no expansion of existing or former use. That also could apply to things like sidewalks and sidewalk repairs. New construction or conversion of small structures, so that can also qualify as an exemption, or information collection. Sometimes the capital improvement projects have an early phase where they have to collect data or do some research before the project can actually proceed, and that can be exempt under CEQA. If you go on to the next slide. So out of the projects that we looked at, 19 were determined to be exempt under CEQA. 26, we believe further review will be required. So the engineers will know up front as they're going forward with the project design that some sort of environmental review will be required. There was one project that we've clearly identified at this phase will need a draft initial study. One was the old Capitol site fuel reduction and cleanup project. So that's a really exciting project. That's that very large acreage the city acquired for parks and recreation purposes on our hillside. We need to adopt an environmental document when we look to cut down the weeds and move forward with that. We're anticipating that adoption either by the Planning Commission or Council before the end of the calendar year. The second one is one that you've already approved, and that was the Greenbelt fuel reduction. And before we acquired the old Capitol site, we conducted environmental review and had biotic studies done for all our Greenbelts in the city and looking at the impacts of fuel reduction on those properties. And that was certified by the Planning Commission back in December of 2020. Next slide. So in conclusion, the attachments to your staff report include more in-depth analysis about the CEQA determinations and the consistency, but we're recommending you adopt a resolution to the City Council finding the NCIP is consistent with our various planning documents. And I also earlier in the presentation mentioned our CIP. That list is just getting finalized, and you will have a supplemental meeting once we're given that list on the actual CIP. And those tend to be much more these are very neighborhood driven projects, what the neighbors want to see in terms of capital improvements, where our CIP is much more focused on sewer repairs and a street repair and a sidewalk repair, where I think you probably have seen from the list, there's a wide variety of projects that the NCIP is proposing. So with that, that concludes our presentation. If you have any more questions, please feel free to ask.
Any questions from commissioners to staff?
I have one. Back to page 19, number 3, CW 41, capital site fuel reduction and cleanup. In the description below, it says plus deep old campsites of toxic residue. I don't understand that.
Typically, the initial project submittal is pretty broad. I've never been back there, so I couldn't say
I have.
what I couldn't say what's, but like I said, they're very broad and just kind of an initial thing.
And is it accurate to say, Cody, that these project descriptions are predominantly drafted by the residents as they're proposing them? And that as the project get refined, our engineering staff will work on helping to define that project in more detail?
That's correct. Yeah, I would say the descriptions are at a very initial
Yeah.
stage.
So in terms of the transient encampments that were on the old Capitol site, before the city acquired the site, the Pebble Beach Company spent thousands and thousands of dollars of removing all of the trash that remained for the city. We also have our police department has purchased some, I don't know what you call them, vehicles, quads, I guess, that are appropriate to tour the site. I'm not aware of any new encampments on the old Capitol site official. I have seen them along the freeways that are sort of on the buffer between the old Capitol site and the freeway. So I think a couple things to keep in mind when you look at these definitions. I think they were predominantly crafted by the public. This is what they want their project to achieve because this is a neighborhood community improvement program list. And we will look at that issue as that it becomes more refined and make sure whoever is assigned to this project will probably meet with our police department and meet with the Parks and Recreation staff who periodically tour the site and help define that description. I am not aware of old campsites of toxic residue. I would say they were very dirty when we cleaned them up, but I believe it was all cleaned up prior to acquisition.
Thank you.
Following up on that, though, that struck me too as a strange term, deep old campsites. Is that a typo or is that meant to read that way?
I think that's probably what the public, the person, so remember this is a neighborhood driven, resident driven project description. And they write project descriptions maybe differently than we would write technically.
Okay.
And some of them need to be refined with the public and that's why we have staff from their engineering division that are assigned to these projects and they work on refining that project description.
Okay.
If, let's say, Cody's assigned that project and he goes out with our police department and there is no transient residue sites, then we'll probably drop that from the proposed.
Yeah, I assumed it was just a typo and it meant clean old campsites.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And then instead of deep, somebody misread the word clean as deep.
Must have been my handwriting.
Yeah. Oh, was that your report?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you're the one asking about it. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
So that's what you meant.
No. Not,
I have a question, Cody. How many NCIP members are there on the committee? How many committee members are there?
Each neighborhood, which I believe we have
14,
15
15.
neighborhoods, each neighborhood has its own representative and some of them also. So there are 15.
15, and there's 47 items.
So like I said, we had 154 projects go to voting night. And then we had kind of an idea of how much funding we would get for this year. And we already had done initial estimates for each of the projects. So just to save planning and other staff time, we took the projects that we anticipated to fit within our funding and passed them on to get this initial screening from planning.
So they could vote for several projects, just rating all the projects 1 to 10.
That's correct. They vote on every project, 0 to 10.
Okay.
It's very complicated.
It does, it is. I've only won once until midnight, and that was only half the list. Yeah.
We have made that process much more efficient. Just for an example, we would call out a project, say Capitol site cleanup.
Yeah.
And then each representative has cards 0 to 10 We say vote, they all put it up simultaneously. We mark or we document each vote, and then we'll add that up, and then that project will have a score. And we do that for all the projects, if that clarifies it.
It
anymore.
is.
I have a few other questions. You know, I'm in favor of this thing, but you know, it's hard to really say you're against any specific project. But number 9, sports center pool dehumidifier. That's an expensive dehumidifier.
Big time.
Can you explain that?
I am not much of a mechanical engineer, unfortunately. I know if Tom wanted to step in on that.
$1,925,000.
Yeah.
And that, hello, Commission. My name is Tom Hardy. I'm the senior engineer for the program. The project that did get approved was for the dehumidifier. It ended up being $1.2 million. Was the final number on that. The original submittal on all of the sports center projects, there were, I believe, 8 to 10 projects that were voted on separately. And so the dehumidifier was the highest priority project from the Parks and Rec Commission. So that one was approved for funding at $1.2 million. The way I understand it, an mechanical engineering firm was hired to look at the system that's there. Currently, there's not. My understanding is that there's not enough airflow that goes through the natatorium, the pool room. So they're trying to increase the airflow to keep the chlorine off the metal surfaces, and doors are rusting and all kinds of things are corroding faster than normal. And the process is to effectively remove what's there, install a more efficient and higher capacity fan system to recycle the air out of there.
Wow.
So that's the thing. And a fair amount of that, I saw a report that was prepared a while ago, is also just for uncertainties with the current economy and market right now, and just being able to secure equipment that's needed and the parts and things like that. The engineering firm recommended a high contingency amount. I think it was like 75 to 100% or something, but we didn't go with that. But still, it is quite expensive.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
Yeah.
I have
I
a
have a go ahead, Dan.
question, I guess, is for Kim. On terms of when I look at the list of projects and you have 45,000 here and $1 million there, or whatnot, and how is staff's time, like when you have to do additional environmental analysis and whatnot, how is that allocated to these projects? Or is it?
Yeah, probably at this phase, it's not completely defined. So these were the project estimates based on, I think, sort of the first swipe, if you will, by our engineering staff. And then, as you can see, as it gets more refined, we now let them know which projects we think require additional environmental review. So as this gets refined and we go to the city council, they'll have an idea of which ones will require initial studies. Maybe sometimes the most common report we need is either a biotic report or an archaeology report to support an exemption for maintenance projects. So we'll say, oh, for this one, you'll need a biotic report, and we'll confirm no sensitive species or something like that. So, and I believe these projects, the way they're listed in number, is the highest ranked project, I believe, was number 1. And so as the funding estimates come in, you'll be able to see we fund this one first, then this one, then this one. And then I think sometimes if things get too out of whack with cost, our engineering staff may bring that back for some sort of discussion. So it's an iterative process. As it's really interesting. It's a very democratic process where the neighbors submit all these projects. They're not typically city staff. Maybe we'll throw one in sometimes, but most of the time it's a resident that lives in this neighborhood and believes this needs to be fixed. And so it's a direct way for them to propose capital projects that in a lot of communities are overlooked.
Okay, thank you. And I think there was another question.
I did have one other one. So just curious, item number 22, the capital site master plan. So create master plan for the 136 acres. Is that in the NIP? Shouldn't that be like a planning project? I'm curious why it's in this list.
So some of these end up being planning projects, very few of them, but some of them, the planners will be assigned to lead. Sometimes the park superintendent or city like the Greenbelt maintenance will be given to our parks department who maintains our green belts, and they'll go through all the processes. They'll work with the engineering division on total cost. Some cases they're shifted to the planning office. In this case, it's a public park. My guess is that our recreation division will probably work with a consultant and prepare a parks plan for that site. Ultimately, the planning commission's role at a minimum will be, approval of environmental documents, finding consistency with the general plan. It could be more significant. Sometimes the last time the Park and Recreation Master Plan was written, it was actually led by Elizabeth Carricker. And so sometimes they ask for a greater planning role. We already have our hands full, so hopefully Recreation can just take this one. But it is, we work collaboratively on like Larkin Park swings installation. Louis Marcuso, our park superintendent, will most likely just take that and run with it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
I have a couple of questions.
go ahead.
This has been a tumultuous time for NCIP the last couple of years. And with the cost escalating, what does our engineers feel that existing projects outside NCIP, how much more are they in expense, so that we can get some kind of idea how much we're going to be seeing here? An increase.
So we are considering inflation has skyrocketed. It's been pretty consistently at about 4% per year for the last 7 to 8 years. So it's been real steady. The first 4 or 5 months of this year was at 8% already this year. So we'll be taking that into consideration. We'll be allocating additional funding for contingencies on each of the projects. We'll probably estimate what it will cost to construct next year. So that could be an additional, 8% right there. So we are considering that, and we'll just use the funding that we have available this year for that. For the existing projects, there's about 20 of them at the moment, and we're just working within the budget that we have on those projects. If funding runs low, as it has on several of them, we were able to come back to the NCIP committee and we've asked them for additional funding. They'll review that. And again, the recommendation goes to council. We'll bring it to city council, who will approve allocating additional funding to each of the projects that needs it. The NCIP also has a contingency fund where monies from for contingencies, and when a project comes in under budget, we'll take the ending balance and put it into an account also. So there's money that we can draw from for the contingencies when they occur. Did that answer the question?
That answered part of it. One of the things the city does, they also have their own money for these projects. Will it be increasing? That amount be increasing if these other projects go in?
So would that be are you speaking of the capital improvement projects?
I'm speaking of, the city has always pulled a percentage on all projects to do exactly what you're doing. So if these go up, say 8%, that will increase that by 8% as well?
We would, in that case, they will be approved. The council will approve them at the funding that is requested. Will happen on September 20th of this year. So if we ask for $80,000 for a specific project, say the master plan for the old Capitol site, if by the time that project is completed, we need additional funding, we would go back to council and ask for additional funding at that time. So that the monies that are allocated toward the project, when it's approved by council, stay with the project until we realize that they're insufficient. And then we will either, we'll reassess the project to see if it's still a viable and desired project, or and if it is, then we would return to council to ask for additional funding on that one.
I appreciate that, but I'm talking about the basic city funding that they take based on all projects in order to do this process. Is that already paid for, or is this the additional cost? Not to cover the total cost, but just the city's portion.
So Commissioner Brassfield, are you thinking about the cost for the staff time to run the NCIP program?
Correct.
Okay, so I believe the initial cost for the screening and those types of things, is that absorbed by the general fund?
Yeah.
And then as projects develop, the engineers will charge their time to the specific project. So in some cases, I know you're aware of this, there's percentage completion milestones for engineers. And I'll probably get it wrong, but there's like 30% and 60%. And as those numbers come in, the engineer will have charged X amount of time for, maybe they actually designed that item. We have engineers that design various things and pen to paper and do the official cost estimates as they sort of move along. So the initial work, the administrative work at the beginning, I believe is covered by the general fund. But as the project goes forward, then the engineer bills their time to that project.
And that's why I was asking if the additional work will create additional cost.
Oh, so the additional work, yes, it always costs additional. The administrative cost for the department to run the program is absorbed, I believe, by the general fund portion of the engineering budget.
Or the project.
Or
yes.
the project,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, the general fund doesn't pay for it, as I understand the project pays for it.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. My last question to the gentleman is, one of the things that I've been talking about with the public, and they asked the question, if we're having these problems with the evaporator, one engineer suggested that they can remove some of that by allowing more access by larger window opening or larger openings, so that they don't try to keep all that chlorine in that building. It's allowed to escape. Have they looked at that?
Yes, that is the dehumidifier project that was approved by, we're assuming it will be approved by city council, but yes, that is the project to increase the airflow through the natatorium. Will improve. I know there's another project was for the doors, which are rusting and slide replacement and things like that. So the first most important step is to get the airflow corrected so that there's enough that the chlorine won't just be sticking to any surface that's there. They could put a larger fan.
Yeah, the engineer I talked about said allowing natural evacuation of that air inside by having larger openings to the outside. Has that been looked at?
There was a study that was done on the building, and I'm not familiar with it enough to know whether that was a situation that they investigated.
Thank you.
Any other questions from Planning Commission?
I have one sort of question comment. I think I hear when people discuss the NCIP projects that are being suggested, often in discussing them, they say, well, why should we put this on the NCIP list when this project could be covered by the city streets budget? For example, downtown Monterey, Alvarado Street in front of the Ozio Rodriguez building, the sidewalk is sunk in a place and it needs to be repaired. And my guess, I'm uninformed, but my guess is that city streets that would be a capital expense of city streets. But then we look at number 31, the Casanova sidewalk, to install a concrete sidewalk along the northeast side of Casanova Avenue. Why wouldn't that be a city streets project? So, how do we know that all these projects couldn't be handled by regular budgets within the city engineering and traffic?
They could be. It may take many years for that to happen. The one sidewalk you mentioned on Casanova, right now there's a long block just with no sidewalk at all. There's sidewalk on either end, and there's a missing piece in the middle. And that project was to connect the two sidewalks. By the time the city, if you're looking at priorities, Alvarado Street is going to be a much higher priority than Casanova Street, just because of the volume of pedestrian traffic there. So we would, in fact, we were talking about Alvarado Street this morning in Turner project. So that's coming up. The Casanova Street would be years down the road before we ever got there. This is an opportunity for the neighbors who see a need to suggest that the city undertake a project to meet that need. That we just as city staff, there's not as many of us as there are residents in the city, so we don't get out to every single street.
It is a question that does come up, though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, any other questions? All right, we'll take public comment starting in the council chambers and then online.
Before I give anyone a chance to speak in person, I do want to announce for the viewers online
Thank you.
to join the Zoom meeting from a computer or phone, use the link or phone numbers on the agenda posted at isearchmonterey.org. To join them by telephone, dial 833-568-8864, toll free. Once again, that phone number is 833-568-8864. Then enter the webinar ID 161-990-8039. Once again, the webinar ID is 161-990-8039. To provide public comment via Zoom, please use the raise your hand function at the bottom of your screen. To provide comments by phone, dial *9 to raise your hand, then *6 to unmute when called upon. Public commenters will be announced using their last 3 phone number digits or the name typed into Zoom. And is there anyone in person who wants to provide comments on this item? The NCIP projects? No, and I do not see any hands raised online either.
Okay, then we will bring it back to commissioners for comment, and hopefully someone will make a motion here for recommendation. Any comments?
I'll move to recommend to the city council that this NCIP program is consistent with the general plan.
Thank you, Terry. Can I have a second?
Second that.
And a second. Can we have the vote taken, please, Jennifer?
Sorry, my mic. Chair Reed is absent, and then we have Vice Chair Fletcher,
Yes.
Commissioner Brassfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Dawson,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
Commissioner Latassa,
Yes.
Commissioner Milich.
Yes,
This motion carries, and it is not appealable because it is going to council anyways.
Great. So we're moving on to the next item on the agenda, item number 5, which is consider 136 Herman Drive, application for an H2 historic zoning. And that's TM-22-0120. Application owner is Lorraine Kaminsky. The zoning district is R110. Low density residential general plan land use designation, and it's exempt from CEQA per Article 19, Section 15305, Class 5. Can we have a staff report?
Yes, thank you, Chair Fletcher. My name is Fernanda Roveri, Principal Planner for the City of Monterey. As Chair Fletcher said, this is a zoning request to zone 136 Herman Drive as a city historic resource. Staff's recommendation is that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution recommending that the City Council adopt an ordinance to rezone the property as a city historic resource. On July 14th of this year, the Historic Preservation Commission recommended that the Planning Commission recommend this rezone to the City Council. The subject property is 136 Herman Drive, as you can see on the screen. It is located in the Monterey Vista neighborhood, and it is directly across the street from the Monterey High School. The property was evaluated by architectural historian Kent Seavey. He prepared what's called an intensive survey, which evaluates the property for its potential to be a historic resource. Mr. Seavey found that the property does qualify as a local historic resource based on California Registry Criteria 1 and 3. Criterion 1 is about the resources association with events that are important to our local history. And it was found that the residence is associated with the development of the Monterey subdivision, tract number 1, which is the most extensive residential housing development in Monterey between 1926 and 1950. And the residence was also found to be eligible under Criterion 3 because it embodies the distinctive characteristics of the type of construction that was done in that subdivision. The residence was constructed in 1930 to 1931 and is a very good and essentially intact example of the earliest housing development in this subdivision. The property also retains all aspects of historic integrity. These are some of the character defining features of this type of residential style. This residential construction is 1-story, wood framed. It's known as a vernacular cottage style, irregular in plan, and resting on a concrete foundation. It has rough cut Carmel stone for the exterior wall cladding, low pitched cross gabled roof, a partial width raised covered open porch with closed Carmel stone rail, and multi-pane steel casement and fixed windows, including an arched focal window in the east-facing gabled bay, which faces the front of the property. In order to qualify for the rezone, the property needs to meet the eligibility requirements for H2 zoning. And it does meet them because the qualified architectural historian found that the property is significant as a local historic resource. So just to repeat, staff's recommendation is that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution recommending that the City Council rezone the property. I'm available for questions, and I'm not sure if the applicant is here, but her name is Lorraine Kimsey, and she submitted a public comment that was provided to you earlier.
Thank you, Fernanda. Questions for staff? Okay, no questions. I particularly love this house. I saw it when it was on the market not too long ago. It's a really beautiful home. No questions for staff. Shall we move to public comment?
The applicant is here, so before we take any
Oh,
public
okay.
comment, if you would like to provide your own comment.
Sure.
And Ms. Kimsey, can you check to see if the green light is on?
Okay, good afternoon. Yikes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Lorraine Kimsey, and I'm the new owner of 136 Herman Drive. I purchased the house in December of 2021 from a family who had owned it since 1938 and fortunately had not altered the exterior during that time. It was built of Carmel stone in 1931 after the Jacks family subdivided their property to create the Monterey neighborhood. A copy of the original 1930 title is included in your packet, along with my proposed 25-year maintenance schedule. The packet also contains a photo of a Mills Act property, the John M. Thompson House at Monroe and Jefferson Streets, which bears many similarities to my home. As an indication of my commitment to historic preservation, I've included a picture of the Mills Act home in which my late husband and I resided for 13 years, the Norman Davis House. During that time, we not only passed each inspection by the various Monterey City Commissions, but exceeded the maintenance schedule. I ask you to once again provide me the opportunity to support the goals of the Mills Act by approving my application for 136 Herman Drive, and I thank you for the guidance and support you've given me during this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Nazzy? Okay, we'll go back to public comments.
No
I don't
hands.
know how to stop.
Make
Just-
it stop.
Just one moment, we're minimizing the timer here.
Okay,
We can see all of our
Rates it.
commissioners.
You can reset it, but you can't turn it off.
I guess.
I don't know how to stop the sharing.
Ooh,
Sorry, I don't normally present. Okay, we are at public comment now. Did anyone have any questions for the applicant?
Nope.
Okay, so then we are at public comment. To join the Zoom meeting from our computer or phone, use the link or phone numbers on the agenda posted at isearchmonterey.org. To join by telephone, dial 833-568-88 toll. Sorry, it's a toll-free number, 833-568-8864. Then enter the webinar ID 161-990-8039. I don't see any hands raised online, but is there anyone in person who wants to comment on this item? No, I would say no comment.
okay. Well, then we'll move it back to the commissioners for discussion.
I'd like to make a comment.
Yes, go ahead.
This looks like a really good project. I happen to know the Kimseys. And I've been to the other house, but not this one. And I know they're good for making it even better than it is today. So I'll vote for this.
I want to echo Mike's comments and a shout out to all of the people who have applied for Mills Act status for their homes, their willingness to immediately jump in and make improvements to the infrastructure, making sometimes older homes livable when they weren't. HVAC, floors, appliances, roofs, foundations, shear wall. All of the Mills Act people who have been successful have made improvements such as this and are responsible for this cadre of historic homes that have been preserved in Monterey, and this is a particularly fine one. And I know that the Rini has really gone into very good improvements inside while leaving the outside as it appeared in 1931 as a visual reminder of that era. So I'm in full support.
I also agree with what's been said. I've always admired this house. It just sits so prettily there on the hill, and it's so appropriately sited, and it's really a very handsome house.
Okay. Anyone else? I'd like to thank Ms. Kinsey for bringing this project forward for H2 historic zoning Mills Act consideration. This is a really, as an architect, it's a house that I just love. It's beautiful, and I'm so glad it's stayed so much intact since the 30s. It's really a beautiful home, and I'm definitely in favor of this of the Mills Act designation for this property. Anyone else? Okay, can I have a motion?
Sure. I make a motion that the planning commission adopt a resolution recommending city council adoption of an ordinance to rezone the property at 134 Herman Street as a city historic resource from R110, R110H2.
I'll second that.
Second, so we have a motion and a second. Jennifer, can we have a vote?
Yes, Chair Reed is absent and Vice Chair Fletcher,
Oh, definitely yes.
Commissioner Brassfield,
Aye.
Commissioner Dawson,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
Commissioner Latassa,
Yes.
Commissioner Milich.
Yes.
Great. This motion carries, and it is appealable. It is not appealable because it has to go to council anyway. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful project. Okay, we're on to item number 6, which is consider 103 Flag Hill Drive, application PA-22-0089, to amend UP-18-0307 to allow expansion of a deck on slopes over 25%. The applicant is John Mazzy, and let's see, owners John Joseph and Vanessa Mazzy, zone RE, and it's very low density residential, general plan land use designation, and it's exempt from CEQA requirements for Article 19, Section 15301, Class 1. Can we have a staff report?
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. Again, Fernanda Roveri here. So 103 Flag Hill Drive is located on the very south portion of the city. I don't know if you can see, but it's this light blue highlighted lot right here. The property is within a gated community. Flag Hill Drive it doesn't loop around, but you enter through here, and you can go either left or right, and the property is at the very end to the right. And this is the site. As you can see, there is a lot of topography here. Flag Hill Drive is higher than the house. So this is when the house wasn't constructed, but Flag Hill Drive sits higher than the house. So there's a driveway that goes down to the site. This exhibit was provided when the Planning Commission first approved the house to be built here. So this is a floor plan of the house, which is already constructed. And the deck location, I made an outline of the deck location here. As you can see, the dark green shows slopes of 25% or more. And the gray also shows 25% or more slopes. So the deck would be encroaching into that slope area. So this is a deck expansion. So if you can see here, I outlined the original deck, which was approved. It used to be just a rectangular shape, but the applicant is proposing to expand it to give it this L shape. So they're pulling it back in terms of length, but making it a little bit wider. And it would subsequently encroach a little further into that 25% slope area.
And I think it's important, Fernanda, to emphasize the part of the reason of the change of the deck shape was to preserve a tree. And as they were refining their site design, this shape did a better job of preserving trees than what was originally envisioned.
Yes, that's true.
Wise move.
So there is a policy in our general plan that basically only allows minimal encroachment into 25% or greater slope. And it discourages development on steep slopes unless they are located to minimize impacts to adjoining property and the public right of way. And here it says, the Planning Commission shall determine that the amount and location of 25% slope area so severely restricts the development potential of the lot that prohibiting development on 25% slope deprives such property of privileges enjoyed by other similar property. And so staff evaluated the proposal and found that it complies with the zoning ordinance in that the deck would serve the existing single-family home that is built there. And the deck expansion is negligible considering that the subject site is 1.085 acres. The deck expansion would minimally encroach into the 25% or greater slope area, and it would not require further grading or vegetation tree removal. In fact, as Kim suggested, it would save a tree, and only excavation for the footings would be required. So it wouldn't really grade the site further. And the steep slopes that surround the property do restrict its development potential. The deck expansion would provide flat outdoor space, which other similar properties nearby enjoy. Other properties nearby don't have this such steep slopes as this one does. The project will not be detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare of persons residing or working in or adjacent to the site or neighborhood, and that a geotechnical report concluded that the site is suitable for the proposed development. And this geotechnical report was submitted to our building division. So staff's recommendation is to approve the permit amendment to allow the deck expansion on slopes over 25%. I'm available for questions, and the applicant did tell me that he was going to be there in person.
Okay,
I have
thank
a question.
Yes, go ahead.
On the materials that were supplied to us, one of the plot sites shows the address as Salinas. I think that's a misprint. For the record, I think it needs to be corrected. Because we are in the city of Monterey, not Salinas. My other question is, how tall is the structure supporting the deck at its highest point?
How tall is, you're saying how tall is a footing?
How tall is, it's going to be more than just a footing for the 25%. I assume it's going to be some structural material. How tall from the ground level of the footing to the bottom of the deck?
I can look in the Exhibit A, but I would also ask the applicant to provide that information. if he's available. But I can also look in the exhibit.
That was gonna be my question also. How tall are the timbers above the footing piers?
Where is it? Side view.
They did not provide that.
I see.
May I address the commission?
Yes,
Honorable Chair and Commissioners, Matt Gorley, I'm the actual builder for the project. At the tallest point, it would be 7 feet, 6, 7 feet. As the slope, we're right at grade coming out the door of the house. So that's at 6 inches. But just to further the comments made by the city planners, the reason the deck, we had a permit to move forward on the deck. The reason that we did is once we pulled the string lines to start digging the footings, we saw that it encroached on the trees that were present. So the owner wanted to save the trees, and that's why we wanted to encroach on the 25% slopes. Was there any other questions?
That's all I have. Thanks.
thank you, Matt.
I have one. I was curious as to the elevation lines on the drawing, and it never said what what they meant. Didn't say if it was 0, 1 or 1,000, and it was just there's lines that, and it would have been so much easier for me, the engineer, to take a look at the lines and say, okay, that's a 7-foot drop.
Yeah, I couldn't comment on the topo at all.
Okay. Any other questions of staff or the owner representative? Okay, is the owner available to make a comment?
John, I'm the owner of the property, so I don't have much more to say than what Matt said. When we kind of laid everything out, grove of oak trees. We like the trees anyway, but it provides good coverage for the deck, so we didn't want to cut them down. So that's kind of why we're here talking about this.
Okay. Questions? Okay, thank you. There's no further questions of staff. We've heard from the owner, and now we can open it up to public comment. Council chambers first.
There's no one in the council chambers.
Okay,
It's lonely over here.
There's nobody in the Zoom meeting either, I believe. One person who always watches. To join the Zoom meeting from a computer or phone, use the link or phone numbers on the agenda posted at isearchmonterey.org. To join by telephone, dial 833-568-8864 toll free, then enter the webinar ID 161-990-8039. To provide public comment via Zoom, please use the raise your hand function at the bottom of your screen. To provide comments by phone, dial *9 to raise your hand, then *6 to unmute when called upon. Still no hands raised. I think we're safe to move on.
okay, then we'll bring it back to commissioners for a comment and a motion.
Well, it seems that this, I'm in favor of this application. It's a huge over acre site. You have an existing house and there's only so much you can do to create decks adjacent to that house, and the site is steep. So I'm in favor of it.
Let me make a motion to approve a permit amendment PA 220089 to amend UP 180307 to allow expansion of a deck on slopes over 25% at 103 Flag Hill Drive.
Thank you, Sandy. Is there a second?
Second.
Further comments? Okay, Jennifer, can we have a vote?
Yes, Chair Reed is absent and Vice Chair Fletcher
Yes.
and Commissioner Brassfield.
Yes.
Commissioner Dawson,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
Commissioner Latassa,
Yes.
and Commissioner Milich.
Yes.
Thank you. This motion carries and it is appealable to the city council with forms found at the planning office within the next 10 days.
Thank you.
Recommendation that you change the address to Monterey, California.
Noted. Okay, so we're moving on to commissioner comments. Any questions, clarifications, or brief announcements from commissioners?
No.
I have one. I thought it's always been so interesting to see what various cities have done with their little parklets after the pandemic. And it ranges. And so I was in Los Gatos, and I encourage you to go look at their parklets up there because they've established a very consistent design vernacular that seems to work really well. It's just nicely done. So take a look whenever you're up that way. It's a beautiful job. Any other comments?
Got a planning update.
Sure. I do want to point out some of the actions by the city council on July 19th. Item number 2 on your report, the city council authorized $369,000 for us to move forward with our general plan update of the housing element, safety element, and land use element. And this is all in response to the state of California regional housing needs allocation, where the city of Monterey will need to show adequate sites for 3,654 housing units. It does include the safety element. I think as planners, we think that's going to be a good place to start. Is let's look over the next several planning horizons about where we should be putting housing in terms of safety issues as climate change and we know our world is changing. So that is going to be a major work effort of the Planning Commission. And in this next year and a half, we have until December of 2023 for the city council to have a certified, the city of Monterey to have a certified housing element. So I did want to let you know we put that forward. Of that $369,000, $150,000 was secured through grant writing through our office and award of that grant from the state of California. So we're excited about that. So good to know housing element's going to be moving forward. We've also in our housing division been working very hard at looking at city-owned sites appropriate for affordable housing. And we actually started this a couple of years ago where we inventoried every city-owned property. And we scrubbed those, you know, some of them are little pieces of green space and, you know, we have remnants here and there. And we brought forward to the city council ultimately, probably, I think it was about 5 to 7 properties where we thought we might be able to build affordable housing. The city council ultimately released, the city released an RFP on 4 sites. One was right behind City Hall here where the those sort of derelict structures are right behind City Hall. One was the KIP principal parking garage. One was the parking lot across on Adams Street, across from the park there. And the other one was at our harbor yard at on Figueroa Street, sort of Figueroa and Franklin. So we released that RFP. We had proposals for all of those sites. They went through a competitive review process. And after a couple reviews at city council and direction, originally they narrowed it from 4 sites down to 2, one behind City Hall and the other one on that parking lot across from the park on Adams Street. And the city council was direction to enter into an exclusive negotiating agreement with Mid-Penn Housing for the site behind City Hall. So we're fairly excited about working on that project and moving forward. We're looking at potentially up to 36 units ranging 0 to 30% and 30% to 60%. of the median income. So we're talking on the much lower range, and trying to work to house some of our most vulnerable in the city.
This 442
Kim,
Street.
That one was dropped off the list.
Okay, so this is the parking lot that's next to.
Well, at this point, the only one that's been authorized is the one behind City Hall. 442 Adams Street was taken off the list at last Tuesday's council meeting.
How in the world are we going to get up to 3,000 new houses, new anythings in the city of
Yeah.
Monterey?
We're not.
It's very simple. We build the houses without plumbing.
Well, we're going to have a big challenge in front of us, so we'll be looking at a variety of options.
I was gonna say, yeah, the 36 units is so much, that's a substantial project. And when you subtract 3654 minus 36, that you end up with 3618.
Mhm.
So good start.
It's a start.
hey, Kim, did you look at that Monterey property at the entrance to the airport on airport, right at the intersection? It's just right now it's just vacant. It's a
Oh.
very small lot, so it'd be a very small house, but is that looked at?
There's one city-owned property there that's very small. That didn't really rise to an interest level as far as other properties. In that side of Garden Road, we did not rezone for housing yet. I mean, we may in the future, as we go through this process, have to rezone both sides of Garden Road. Our former Fort Ord property. I think what's interesting as you look at this, if you go back and look at the presentation for the 442 Adams Street, we were looking at about 60 units and it was 6 stories. You think of 60, we need 3,000, just do the math. We would need 60 of those buildings in our downtown to be able to accommodate our arena. So I think it helps to have, well, we weren't successful necessarily in all of this. I think we potentially have some prototypes that we can at least start to think about and vision. But it will be a fundamental change to our zoning in Monterey that has never, well, it's not occurred during my sort of 25 years here. So it'll be a fundamental change to our zoning that we'll be looking at.
To the property on Figueroa where the old fire station was, that's owned now, and it's storing city equipment.
That was,
Figueroa and Franklin.
that was one of the ones that made it to the RFP stage.
Okay, good.
That was probably the most challenging between that and the KIP property technically.
Uh-huh.
And
Sounds easy. Just build on top of a parking garage.
we'll be working hard as a community, as a commission, and on our housing element coming up in the next year and a half. And
We're not the only state struggling with this.
no,
So,
I'm sure you've heard it up and down the state of California. The San Diego region's ahead of us and the LA region is ahead of us. And it's been incredibly controversial if you do searches for those areas.
Yeah, Kim, I noticed you mentioned that on August 29th, I think it is, we're going to revisit the wireless ordinance. The commission is. Are we going to be having a report or a document from the city attorney on the legality of what's going on with Carmel and the Santa Barbara decision?
So we're going to start, I heard that comment that you wanted to start with a legal framework, where are the legal cases, including the Carmel case. So Gail Koresh, our expert legal attorney in wireless, who has worked on a lot of various lawsuits on different sides. She will be presenting just sort of a current status report of the legal framework of wireless. And then, whether the commission's able to pass this ordinance on in 1 or 2 meetings. I'm looking at August 9th and August, I think it's 23rd, the other one. As it's going to be your work effort here at the end of the summer working through that and ultimately making a recommendation to our city council.
Thank you.
And I am thinking 7 o'clock, just because of the feedback we received. We have no 4 o'clock session. So, and I'm going to try to keep it just to this single item because, you know, there's a lot of public testimony. I think in total, I have over 120 pages of public comments. So, much of them have already been posted to the website. Anyways, they're up and you can look at them if you'd like, but, it's not an easy topic. So just be prepared.
My concern is that the last time we had this at a meeting, an open meeting, as you recall, it was went quite long. And we had a lot of people who wanted to be able to appear and testify. And I'm just wondering if we start at 7 o'clock, and we have that kind of show up, we're going to be there a lot longer than midnight. So I'm just wondering about, you know, starting at 7 o'clock. Are we going to have put a time limit on, we go no further than this and then continue to the next meeting? But it's something for you to think about, for us.
Our meetings do end at 11 p.m. So whatever we get through from 7 to 11, hopefully we can hear the presentation, close public comment, and we'll see how far the commission gets in their discussion.
Last time we went past 12:30.
Mhm.
So the staff report was sent out to us 2 months ago, I think.
So that was the staff report in April. It hasn't changed that much. Other than we now have after your meeting, a whole series of additional public comments were received. So we have all the new public comments and there have been some modifications to the ordinance made.
Okay, so there'll be a new published.
There will be a new published version and the revised ordinance we really looked at every single public comment and we discussed it, and we're making our best recommendation to you, which I think is all we can do at this point, and you'll be in the tough position of making a recommendation.
You always do make a great recommendation.
So we'll see you August 9th, and I will discuss with the chair the 4 versus 7 o'clock.
Or 6 o'clock.
Or 6 o'clock. If you want to skip dinner.
Yeah, maybe that's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
I think we already noticed it today in the newspaper for 4 or 7, because that's our normal template. We didn't use it for 6. Probably still time to change that tomorrow if we want to.
Maybe if we confuse them.
I think we could. They always send it back for edits, and I don't think I've seen that yet. I was busy this afternoon, obviously, but
Yeah. Since Chair Reed is gone, maybe we'll talk to Commissioner Fletcher, our vice chair, about how we want to do that and see if we have any more flexibility.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, well, he's coming. I mean, Chair Reed will be here for the next.
Oh, he'll be there for that. I think he's just finishing up his, we've all gone on summer vacation and we just caught him on the tail end of his.
Yep.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. That's all I have.
Okay, then this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Thanks.